Hello, everybody. Going to start out a little bit today with a recent live performance from Stacy Seabrook. So, here we go.
Thank you, Peacewalk. All your papers all over the place. So, up next, Stacy Seabrook.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Sure. I'll take them stand, sure, because I'm going to try and mount this baby. Thank you. Hey, everybody.
Think sideways.
Hey, everybody, thanks. I think it's the first time maybe this thing is, I've been live streaming this on my YouTube channel. So there's actually another 20 people in the room right now. And I don't know if people have paid attention, but I have
yes, KZ did tweet about Stacy.
Bitten by
pretty awesome.
This documentary. And by the way, people, I want to just share this guy right here. Kevin Mitchell.
Kevin Mitchell?
That's right.
Yeah, and check him out. He's awesome.
Helping Stacy out.
He's going to accompany me on a couple of tunes. And so these songs I have they all revolve around a documentary called Making a Murderer. It's a Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey case of wrongfully convicted individuals. Fabulous documentary. If you've never seen it, I suggest you watch it. And Kevin's never played this. This is how good he is. He's setting in, man. He's awesome. And I'm going to do this song called Truth Train. So here we go. Get on the train before it leaves the station. Wisconsin versus Avery Company. Fabrication, get on the train before it leaves town. The truth train coming, gonna run them down, run them down. And we all know Stephen and Brendan were blamed, but it does not take a brain surgeon to see that they were framed. Yeah, we know what this was about. The civil suit settlement that did not want to pay out, And you may hear this song, or maybe you don't get it. I suggest you look up TikTok, and it's a walk already. So you will find trial transcripts, evidence files, and reports. You start to fathom the corruption within the courts. Now as you shake your head, because everything seems demented, you will find yourself in company of 3 irate judges that dissent. But don't you worry, you're not going insane. You just having to sit down on telling us truth train. Get on the train before it leaves the station. Final destination, inevitable exoneration. Get on the train. I said before it leaves town, the truth train coming, gonna run them down, run them down. Here we go. Get on the train.
All right. Yeah, that was live performance from Stacy. Fabulous job he did. What do you think, Trav?
Oh, man. Listen to that all night.
Yeah, I know, right? There's 2 more. I may play them at the end. So.
What a tease. What a tease. Hey, did you see Sir Paul's on the line, and
God.
all of the regulars. JB's there with a wrench, and crazy Airedale lady, and
Yeah,
on forth, and
I always notice Paul's havering, although I've gotten to the point now where I've learned to conceal my reaction to it when I see it.
Paul wants to know if you're cold.
Oh yeah, because he sees me wearing a sweater. Yes, Paul, I'm cold. I was cold last night too when you were asking then. So
Hey, did you see Paul on the moors the other day?
yeah.
Oh man, the moors scare me.
But see, when he goes to record there, the problem he has is the moors are way too windy for an iPhone, and it just blows across that microphone, and half the video is.
Oh man, I mean,
but beautiful though.
well, during the day, but you never want to be out there at night.
Yeah, because
No, it's scary.
the
It's
American
scary, scary,
werewolves come
scary.
out.
Oh, werewolves. You got that couple from the mid '60s that buried 5 kids out there. One they never found. You got that. If there's a fire out there in the moors, they burn underground and can travel 2 miles and then pop up. Just the moors are, it's a scary thing. I don't know how he does it.
So somebody had to fly to Fargo last week for work. That's about as creepy as the moors.
-7. Whoa.
Yeah, that's cold. Hey, dude, it's been cold here, dude. LA got snow in the lower elevations, like in places like Thousand Oaks. So
People, I'm embarrassed to say when it gets cold in Texas, or when the coldest, it was, in California, outside of the Sierras, but somebody from Minnesota or Wisconsin, the Dakotas, it's just embarrassing to say, how cold it gets here compared to, what they've had this year, especially. But, I just get it. Oh yeah, we got down to 28,
Yeah.
they're like, below 0. And I'm like, no, 28 plus. And then, come back and talk to me when it's 0, for 4 straight weeks,
Right.
with a high of 10.
Yeah, JB says it's 27 here. So, hey, dude, I guarantee you the Buccaneers would never win if they had to play where you are right now. So, I love the Buccaneers, but they cannot play in below 40-degree weather. They just fall apart.
Is he up near Provo? I know we don't want to say exactly, but he's in Utah.
Sure. Is he back in Utah? I don't know.
I don't know. I know he had a special. Well, we can't probably talk about that either. I know he was out of town. I know he was out of town for a while.
He has the day off. That's what we know. We'll just go with what we know.
He could be in Afghanistan for all we know.
He's wondering. He's asking why. I think. I don't know. Anyway, -50 Celsius. I don't know what Celsius.
That's freaking cold.
Yeah, I bet it is. I'll let those two do the havering tonight. He's talking about us. He's talking about he's going to let us do the havering. He says that's hilarious.
Oh, Jerome, bonsoir. Jerome's here. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, mon ami.
I don't know what mon ami means. I don't know if that's lover or friend. So I'm just going with bonsoir.
It just means my friend.
Okay. Are you sure?
Amour is love. So
okay. Whatever y'all got going on, that's between you.
Yeah, all right, buddy. I hear you're the sausage king anyway, so anyway. So anyways, hey folks, how you doing? We're here today talking, obviously you can tell from the title. We're going to be talking a little bit about, the passion that we all tend to feel here, particularly among I would say the core 300 people, I would say that really religiously follow my channel, even have come over to Discord and start to really research and dig into things over there. But I'd say there's probably a core group of say 300 or 400 people that are just here every day, all the time when I go on, or most of the time, 90% of the time. And those people are the ones that have a serious passion for this, for criminal justice in general. Because the thing is when you get as involved as, and for me to use an example, as I have, yeah, Stephen and Brendan got me to the table, but now I'm looking around and going, well, there's a lot more issues just besides Stephen and Brendan out there. And that's why you've seen me move into cases like Scott Davis. I mean, I have huge issues with the Scott Davis case, and you guys have heard me say it before, and you'll definitely hear me say it again about the Scott Davis case and my issues with it in the future. But then there's also my issues with the staircase. I mean, I make it pretty plain. I'm really in many ways on the fence with that case because, I feel like Michael keeping his extracurricular, extramarital activity secret and being ashamed of it could have offered potential motive for him to have freaked out and killed Kathleen, but yet I still don't understand how that happened. So there's a lot of question marks in that case that lead me to say there's reasonable doubt. But so, and I'll continue to cover like all these different things, but there's no doubt that in that case, Durham County was dealing dirty, dealing off the bottom of the deck in a lot of ways in that case, which is disturbing to see happen because it undermines my confidence in anything that comes out in court when I see that from the state. So, which is another important part to talk, another important point to bring up here today is how very important it is for the state to follow the rules laid down and for the rules to be important so that when folks like us come along and we look into this, we feel like we can trust the state and that we can trust that they are bringing facts to the table and they don't have some other agenda that's more important than getting it right. That's, I think, the important is one of the some of the main important issues. But yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about just criminal justice issues in general here today. Travis has something in particular to talk about in Wisconsin a little later on in the broadcast here. But yeah, we're going to talk about all these things about having that passion, and most of you who are here know what I'm talking about. And how it leads into realizing that these issues are happening in a much broader, way, or in a much broader sense than just in, Stephen and Brendan's case, or the few cases in the United States that have, risen to popularity, whether it be through social media means, whether it be a documentary, whether it be a famous celebrity brought it to the forefront, whatever it might be that brought cases. But there's only ever a handful really that get brought to everybody's attention. There's hundreds and thousands out there that go unnoticed by us that we should also probably know about too. It helps us to inform ourselves better, folks, of what we want when we're electing our judges and our, those types of things. We need to know what's going on in the system now, and if we agree with it, because it informs us about who we want to vote for moving forward and what kind of justice we want to see in our justice system moving forward, and those sort of things. That's what's important. And so that is basically my monologue that kind of sums up what we're going to be basically getting at here today. So any thoughts, Travis? Give you a chance to speak.
No, that's a really great intro. Let's just start getting into it. I've got a few, I have that topic at the end we'll get to, but I've got a few suggestions to throw in along the way if people we're interested in furthering criminal justice reform. What can I do? That it's outside of this particular case, and we can just start filling those in one at a time as we go along. But I've got some suggestions written down. People want to get more involved in
exactly. You were
criminal
talking
justice
about that,
reform.
right? We were talking about that. The last week and a half or so, is that you're already thinking about the lull that's most likely coming once we get a decision from the Court of Appeals. There's going to be another lull, probably because they're going to give her another month probably to file her brief, which she says is already ready to go and already all, in order. She made a tweet about that today, folks. So if you don't know, and so I mean, no matter what, though, after the Court of Appeals makes a decision, whether it's going back to the circuit court or whether we're waiting for Casey's brief, there's going to be a bit of a lull, about a month. And Travis had some ideas for having the Wrecking Crew and anybody else here watching on my channel that has an interest to start looking into some other cases that have some, as Paul loves it when I say, some wonky criminal justice in them. So he loves that. He said he calls that the technical term now. He loves it.
That's great. That's great. Well, one thing we talked about is, going through some cases that are recent, contemporary in Wisconsin, just to draw some parallels. And, they're document intensive and need some review. So you and I have been looking at some different platforms to do that on, and whether it's here or maybe your other channel, or be paying for a service like Blue Jeans where people can collaborate, pop up documents and outlines that they've prepared. We got to get that figured out. But there's a couple of things going on in Wisconsin right now. There's for sure a definite planting case, and the DA, who's retired, is in the process of being either disbarred or suspended or getting a slap on the wrist, or nothing happened. That's going on right now.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court just had a full-blown hearing on it because the former DA is appealing it, fighting it. There's the case, the underlying case, where a kid had evidence planted in his backpack, including, guess what, a bullet and his ID. And I thought that'd be a good case to look at to show there's another county where it was apparently the culture was somewhat acceptable that a police officer would take that upon himself to do. And there's a few other exoneration cases there, but not every case gets the notoriety, the attention like the West Memphis 3 did. That was a total fluke, absolute fluke. That a documentarian backed by the producer of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, how much do you think that guy's worth? But
Peter Jackson's worth quite a bit, I imagine.
Yeah. So he funded that film. It was it was a tiny article, which that's how In Cold Blood started. Truman Capote saw a tiny little article about this murder of a whole family in Kansas, and goes out there to do some research to write an article, and then spends the next 6 years writing In Cold Blood, and then never had to write another book after that because of the huge success. But one of the things I think people can do is get on the Exoneration Project website, the national one. It's innocenceproject.org. Go there. They list the cases and see what cases there are in your state. You may be surprised who may have been exonerated in your own backyard. This is the 25th anniversary of the Innocence Project, started by Barry Scheck. And they have ways for you to get involved, to volunteer, and do different things. Every state has a local Innocence Project. The Wisconsin Innocence Project is at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. They handled Stephen's first case, and then they backed away big time from the current case, and they caught a lot of flack for that. But you know, every local Innocence Project usually attached to a law school. Texas has several because we have several law schools. I'm sure California does. They just opened a new one at Texas Tech, but they have limited resources. They have limited manpower, women power, attorney power. It's run by law students with really good supervising attorneys. And so they have a screening process, and the numbers are just horrific. You know, they might turn down 100 cases or more, 200, 300 for every case they take. They have to meet a certain criteria that they have. And a lot of the work that the law students do is just screening the cases to see if it meets the criteria, which usually requires, so most Innocence Projects that I'm aware of would have rejected this second case that Stephen's got because there's no DNA per se that appears to be able to exonerate him. Unlike his first case, which is why they took the first case, is there was DNA. There was the fingernail scrapings under the victim's fingernails, and then ultimately some hair strands with cellular material, the root attached to the
Right.
hairs. But so, you know, that's one of my suggestions. I wanted to see what your thoughts were on that, is if you're interested in reform beyond becoming interested and educated about this particular case and what's going on in Wisconsin. Like I've said over and over and over again that this isn't an isolated event. This happens in all 50 states, and in a state like Texas where there's a death penalty. You just did a good intro on a pretty famous death penalty case here. You know, it's very rare for a woman to be on death row, but there's a lot of things. Juvenile confessions. Northwestern University has got, you know, two major projects. One is juvenile confessions that they specialize in, and another is they've got an Innocence Project as well. But you know, one of the things you can start to do is just get on the innocenceproject.org, go through their stuff, and find out what's happened in your own backyard.
Yes. Which is another thing I wanted to bring up. You know, I think we should all be inquiring whether or not in our own backyards, if our district attorney's offices and stuff are getting the CIUs. Those are the conviction integrity units, folks. Those are dynamite. Those are solid gold. Because, and here's why. And I say solid gold because they translate into cha-cha-ching. Okay? Just their sheer existence translates into saved money for the state. And here's why. With a CIU, it's called a Conviction Integrity Unit. Okay? It goes in at the DA's office, and what they do is periodically review their own cases, particularly cases that they may have felt were weak or sketchy, and they look to see if there's any new evidence that's been brought to light or whatever. And sometimes they suddenly become active in seeking to exonerate somebody that has been previously convicted. Okay? And what this does, and the reason why it translates into cha-cha-ching, okay, is because you now have removed the adversarial process, right? Where the defense is spending money, the state is spending money, the defense spends some more money, everybody's spending money. The courtrooms that have to sit and listen to all this crap, and the people that have to be there, and the people that
is that the margarine commercial?
It's a tone called Sherwood Forest. It's my text tone.
Yeah, but they used to play that in was it? I can't. Imperial margarine.
The imperial margarine. I know what you
There
mean.
we go. All
Dun,
right.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah. So, anyways, though, it removes that adversarial process, and so you don't have to be paying court recorders and judges and so everything that having to go to court and be in court and do all that money that gets spent. Well, when you have CIUs and you have the actual DA's office in the state looking to correct their own problems, removing that adversarial process, suddenly these guys are getting out much sooner than they would have before after 10 years of fighting, in an adversarial process. Now they're getting out after like maybe only say a couple years to say 7 years instead, right? And that means that the state doesn't have to pay them as much money because they were in less time. The money wasn't wasting another 10 years, prolonging, correcting it. So, I mean, in so many numerous ways, the state saves money, and the defendant and his family save money. It saves the community, the taxpayers at large money. The amount of money saved by having conviction integrity units is just very, very significant, and it's something for everybody to think about. Let's see what's got in chat here. Okay, let me address Jerome here. Jerome, I'm gonna be planning to have the wrecking crew. I've asked. I know I've brought this up a couple times, but I've been meaning to ask them and seriously, to where we're going to go through on my videos and correct all the English subtitles to where we get all the English subtitles, slowly over several month period. Try and go through at least all of my most popular videos and get all the English subtitles worked out perfect, and then have somebody who understands pretty well English and French, then try to translate the most popular videos from those into French and stuff. And so we have a kind of a rough plan to do that. But I want to go ahead and have the wrecking crew make sure all the English subtitles are perfect first, so that way somebody translating to French will have something very solid to work from. So that's my idea. So I just wanted to let you know. Our justice system in Scotland has been fine-tuned over hundreds of years. Yeah, fine-tuned.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Yeah, fine-tuned. But we did get a lot of things from Scotland, and one was their jury system, which I think is one of the best. But things ended up okay over there. But people throw out the Magna Carta at you, and if which that's what I got my master's in law in, is the Constitution. And so we had to actually go look at the one of the original copies of the Magna Carta. And by the way, did you know the King's English, when barristers first started, was actually French? And that's why you needed a lawyer.
Thanks to William the First, the big French Willie, up the English backside.
So yeah, the art of paying somebody to speak for you.
You heard that, right, Capaldi? You heard what he just said, Capaldi. He just said you guys are French.
So anyway, I digress, but a lot of the Magna Carta was written for. It wasn't for the common man. It was just for rich lords who owned property. Yeah. And when our country first started out, unfortunately, we inherited
William the First made all his rich French friends lords and dukes and all that, viscounts.
Right.
Anyway.
So, and he needed money to fund a war, and so they, got the rich got the Magna Carta out of the king. But most people don't realize when the United States was first formed, the only way you could vote, which we'll get to at the end of this. But the only way you could vote when we first started out is if, of course, you were male, white, and owned land.
Right.
If you were a white male that wasn't a landowner, you couldn't vote. So, but we've evolved for the better, and granted women suffrage, thank goodness, and got some more common sense added to the equation, and we keep progressing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see what's going on in chat here.
Well, Paul says bring back the Romans. Evidently, he likes the wall.
Yeah,
Hadrian's Wall. And
yeah.
I'm trying to remember how many.
He'll also start telling you about his favorite part from Monty Python, where John Cleese comes up and starts correcting the graffiti guys' Latin and everything, and he'll tell you all about how a professor who actually is a professor in Latin and understands Latin really well says that part of the movie is actually like dead on accurate. The way that they're talking about conjugating the verbs and the way to write what the guy was trying to write, like everything that they said in correcting the guy writing on the wall was absolutely dead on. And Paul goes on and on about it. That's how I know about this right now. So, anyways,
maybe Paul knows. I wonder how many Roman gates still exist in London. I've been to 2, but I don't know. I don't know if they even exist anymore.
I know Paul grew up in London.
It was Bishopsgate and Cripplegate, but I don't. They keep having to tear them down to make room for other stuff. But I don't know if any of those still exist.
Yeah, Cripplegate sounds about right for the drunk Scotsman. I think we lost them. Anyways, so as we're talking about here today, criminal justice is obviously something that's not going to change quickly. You know what I mean, folks? And I am sorry to break that to you. For those of you out there who were still laboring under that assumption that was, going to happen. No, it doesn't. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think what happens is when enough people are out there taking an interest in putting pressure, then the system will notice. And if we're out there looking at all these wrongful interrogations of youth, and we're looking at these taped interrogations, and we're going, yeah, I can see that's a problem. This makes this unbelievable for me. I don't think that this was a proper confession because of these things that we can now look at and see and hear. Okay, all we had before recording was the cop's word against the kid's word, or the defendant's word. That's all we had, right? But now we can actually look at it and hear it with our own ears. Okay, isn't that important? Because now we as a society can observe that, and we can decide how, moving forward, we want our court systems to work. How we think that the law, and interrogations and things like that, that are important, how they should work. And I think these recordings are going to help inform us moving forward. These are things that if you're passionate about criminal justice, then you got to start to get behind. I mean, that's a big part of why we know that Brendan was wronged, is because his, interview was recorded. And I can't even stress how important that is, and the amount of importance that I'm going to put on that. But yeah, it's absolutely crucial, and we all need to start taking an interest, and we all need to start making our voices heard, saying, we don't find this acceptable. We don't find it acceptable to watch 2 adult investigators take a, learning challenged 16-year-old kid into a room and feed virtually every fact to him and browbeat him and ignore the kid when he tells them that he's guessing, and then put their official seal of approval on that and railroad the kid and put him away for life. I mean, we got to look at these things, and there's more Brendan Dassey's out there, folks. I'm telling you, there's more. There's more. So he's not the only one. This is not the first time this has ever happened. This is not lightning striking twice.
No, that's right. And the one of the foremost experts in false confessions is Dr. O'Shea out of Berkeley, and he was the expert in the West Memphis 3 case for Jesse Miskelly, and they didn't record a lot of that. There was no requirement. They ended up recording a lot of Brendan's statement, but there's still those gaps we don't know about. That evening at Fox Hills, the way things develop. They first they interview him in the school conference room, then they haul him away to the station. And my personal view is that, and a lot of states have parental notification. Got to notify the parents if you're going to take a statement. But Jesse Miskelly, his dad gave him permission, gave the police permission, and they took him down to the station. He was down there for hours, because the one thing they don't tell you is once you give them permission and they get you in a room, then an hour goes by and you're like, well, wait a minute, I want to see my kid. No, I'm sorry. He's with the detectives now. You're just going to have to wait. And most people aren't aware of that. If you grant permission, parent doesn't have the right to pull it once it's granted. My personal view is if you really want juvenile justice, there's either has to be a parent or an attorney in the room with the child. There
needs to be advocates or somebody looking after the child's interests. We can't have any more like what's going on with Brendan or other kids in a similar situation. Absolutely. It's unacceptable. I mean, and you only have to, I mean, it's not like we have to look too far for what roadmap should be being followed, because I think the roadmap already exists. All we have to do is go ask the U.S. District Attorney's Office, how do you handle this sort of stuff? Because, G-Man Steve Moore already told us. The U.S. District Attorney's Office has a pretty good little standard, and what happened with Brendan would never happen with the U.S. District Attorney's Office. The FBI agent or whatever federal agent that would have brought them, if would have brought them what Fassbender brought to Kratz, they would have booted him out on his ear, basically, or he, as Steve put it, they'd have laughed him out of there. And when he got back to his headquarters or whatever, his immediate supervisor would most likely have words for him if he brought what Fassbender brought. So that's where the states need to start looking to, really, for the example of the roadmap of how to proceed when it comes to this sort of stuff, if they're not sure, because that's what a lot of them are going to say right now. How do we enforce the law moving forward then if we can't abuse children like the way we've been? How are we going to do our job? Well, look to the U.S. District Attorney's Office. They got a pretty good little way of doing it. And their way is mindful of things that a lot of state DAs and state and law enforcement officers, when it comes to juveniles, aren't mindful of. And I think being mindful of these things is probably a big part of, alleviating the problem caused when we don't consider that. Like with Brendan, they didn't consider his age and limitations. They didn't want to. Why didn't they want to? Because they wanted the lead pipe cinch against Stephen, and Brendan was just another poor, impoverished Avery in their minds who was expendable, or Dassey. But anyway, So I'll get off my soapbox there again, and I'll let Travis now talk to you guys a little bit about what's coming up there in Wisconsin. Kind of exciting. And I'll introduce it by saying this. Those of you who went out and got registered to vote because of the last election and stuff like that there in Wisconsin, we got something for you.
Yeah, so I wasn't aware that I've been talking to Erekose and Tracy about this election that's coming up for the Supreme Court justice, and I wasn't aware that both of them made a push to encourage people to vote. And there's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Wisconsin announced her retirement. She got cancer. And I think that's under control. I'm not exactly sure it's in remission, but she was on the Supreme Court of Wisconsin for 40-something years.
But it suddenly made her appreciate her remaining years, maybe?
Yeah, and so she announced her retirement, and 2 of Court of Appeal justices are running for her spot. And they both happen to be on the second district court, which is going to hear ultimately, and who has the motion for remand right now, the Second Circuit, 2 of those judges, and they're going against each other. And that election's April 2nd. So if you live in Wisconsin, I hope if you're a registered voter and eligible to vote, I hope you'll turn out April 2nd. There's not a lot of races going on in that, right. And they expect less than a 20% turnout.
Come on, guys, let's get it.
Which means, let's say it's 20% turnout. That means 11% of the state, 10.1% of the state's registered voters is going to decide who is going to replace this Supreme Court justice. I don't like telling people how to vote or who to vote for. You can educate yourself on it. Who would be the best for these type of issues?
Yeah.
And you may have other issues that are important to you. Your kids' education, whatever.
Yeah.
Second Amendment rights, whatever it might be. But you can educate yourself on which candidate. I think there's a clear candidate if you're for criminal justice reform issues or bringing Wisconsin into the 21st century on, constitutional rights. And although they came up with a surprising decision on that Brady issue earlier this month, February 7th, but that could change. That decision could get reversed depending on who gets. They could take another look at it and say, on second thought, that was a bad decision. It was 5-2, as I recall, but depending on how this election goes on April 2nd. Now, apparently, Tracy tells me in Wisconsin, you can register all the way up at the day of the election. You can register. They're going to ask for documentation and might be more of a hassle, but you can go online and also register to vote. You have to mail in, you fill it all out and it prints out an application for you, and you have to mail it to, I think, your local municipal court, and that has to.
Scooby's here. Hey, Scoobs. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Travis.
That's okay. Hey,
Scoobs. How you doing?
She's in Wisconsin, right?
She is, absolutely, yes.
So we were her ears must have been burning. We're encouraging people to vote, Scooby, that live in Wisconsin on April 2nd for in the Supreme Court of Wisconsin race. And I was explaining to people that my understanding is you can register to vote, even the day of the election. You got to bring various forms of ID with you. You want to advance register, which is probably the best bet. You can print out an application online. You got to get that in the mail by about March 10th. So, we're talking within the next 2 weeks, if you want to be registered beforehand, not have any problems. If you've voted in the past, been registered in the past, want to see if you're still registered, they have a way to do that online. Again, I don't feel comfortable with telling people how they should vote.
Right.
But it's easy to look this up. If you need help in finding resources on how to do some basic research on these candidates to see who you think would best support the issues that are important to you. They're not political, so it's not like, judges don't run on a slate of things like, I'm pro-gun, I'm this on abortion, I'm that.
Right.
It's just things about their judicial philosophy, and you can pretty much tell. So it's just like the questions that are asked Supreme Court justices that are high profile, but we can get you the resources if you're having trouble doing your own research. And what are your thoughts on that, Erekose?
I think that, it's through voting that you are able to exercise your voice. I also agree with Travis that it's not up to me or Travis to tell you how to vote. But in this election, it would appear one of these gentlemen seems to have a little bit more of a zeal for criminal justice reform. And I'm not going to say who or what or anything. I'm going to encourage everybody to kind of find out about them themselves. But, I encourage people to get out there and decide what they care about, what issues matter to them, what kind of judgments these guys have handed down, and and see what you agree with, and get out there and vote your conscience. Get out there and vote what you feel. Because that's what this country was based on and designed on, is that it's for the people, by the people. And that's why it's important for us to vote, because that's what the founding fathers gave us. If we were to get organized enough, we could do whatever we wanted in a lot of ways. We vote in the legislators that make the laws. We vote in the president. We vote in, it's up to us. We vote in all these people. And then, it's so ultimately it comes to us. Now, are people always in 100% agreement? Oh, no, hell no, they're not. They almost never are. But it's like I said, the way you have a voice is by getting out there and voting. So, and part of having a voice is getting over there and introducing not introducing yourself, but getting familiar with these two candidates, finding out what each one stands for, and find out which one you agree with. Define for yourself, what's important to you, what issues matter to you. And in doing so, you'll kind of define for yourself, what you're looking for in your politicians. So I encourage that all the way.
So Daisy Lady just pointed out that jury instruction on what the jury should search for, and the constitutionality of that is going to be heard. Said it just up above at the end of March.
April 2nd?
March 26th.
Oh.
April 2nd, Daisy had 4-2 question mark. April 2nd is the special election where Wisconsin is going to select the replacement on their Supreme Court. And that's going to define things for their 6-year terms. And so, it's going to be a real important election. And then, they're predicting less than 20% will turn out for that. So every person we can encourage that's an eligible voter in Wisconsin, it has much more of an impact to encourage them to register, and then, to encourage them to go out on the 2nd and vote. I don't know, how does it work in Wisconsin if there's, a blizzard? I don't know how it works there, if they extend the voting hours or what they do. I've heard.
Let's ask Tracy when we get a chance. Anyway.
Yeah, or Daisy Lady may know, or Scooby, but I hope Daisy.
She says no matter.
Yeah, one of the ideas I have is that whatever platform you're on, you ask, is there anybody in here from Wisconsin?
Mm-hmm.
And we know you have folks from Wisconsin, but whatever it is, other channels or whatnot, I'd like to see all of your subscribers, wherever they have a chance. I know the vast majority of your subscribers are not from Wisconsin, but
right.
They run across people in these channels that you just simply say, hey, are you registered to vote? And, please register and please vote on April 2nd. And the website is myvote.wi.gov, and it tells you everything you need to know to get registered to vote. Again, it'll tell you if you're still registered. If you voted before, but it's been a few years, they'll tell you if it's still valid. And
yeah, and everybody be like T1. Go and Hulk smash the ballot. Hulk smash it, man. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, no.
Obviously, go vote your mind. Maybe don't Hulk smash it, but
Yeah, vote your conscience, but vote. To echo one of your things, and I've said this repeatedly. Judge Flowers, Angie, ran last year. She was appointed to fill a open spot. And then she ran last year, but nobody opposed her. So we're stuck with Judge Flowers for another 6 years just because
nobody did anything, right?
Nobody did anything. The Uyghur ran for sheriff in Calumet County, and his opponent made Brendan's confession a campaign issue,
right.
And said, I don't think Uyghur's any type of a hero. I think he coerced a confession. I think he derailed justice, and he ran hard on that. And then I think the total vote for that election, which it was just primary because it's primarily one
right.
party in Calumet County.
Right.
Doesn't matter which one, but so, in the primary is the big deal. And 2,000 people turned out for that vote, and I think Uyghur won by less than 100. And so it taught me, hey, maybe I can follow these elections a little bit better, and then let people. I don't even know if we even know anybody who's a registered voter in Calumet County, but by letting people in Wisconsin know, one of the things I'm going to do is, I talk to Tracy, if not every day, every other day, just, to compare notes on stuff we're thinking about. But I don't even know if the Avery family votes. Some people just are busy with their lives, and
right.
But I'm gonna find out if they're registered to vote, and I'm gonna ask somebody to again.
Like
I'm not gonna get into their business about who they vote for, and I would never ask anybody how'd you vote after an election. That's right. It's sacred, and people want to share who they voted for, that's fine. But if they don't, I'm never going to ask. But
hey, like when it comes to voting, it's like Stacy says, folks, it really matters. It really matters.
Yeah, I'd like to see all of the Averys and all of their friends. I'd like to see 40 of them go to the polling booth at one time. That's not, in a county where 2,000 people are voting in a primary in a big election year like it was last year, you get 50 people showing up at one time, and they're all identified. That's not lost on local circuit court judges. That's not lost on local sheriffs. And so, I've gotten phone calls on election day, and I'm running late, and hey, did you vote? Oh, whatever you're doing, it's not that important. Go vote. And it's urged me to show up in election when it's just a school board.
Yeah.
And I really didn't care at the time at all. But
yeah, and Ziggy brings up a point. I also think some people feel crushed with voting and seeming as though it makes no difference. And I agree, there are people that fall into that trap of thinking that way. But stop thinking about how you got to stop thinking about having 100% their voting. Start thinking about how when you start to think that way, less and less people vote as time goes by. That's what that kind of thinking does. It erodes and whittles away at voters over time, and we have to try to combat that kind of thinking. It's bad thinking. But yeah, I agree. There are a lot of people that fall into that trap, Ziggy.
Well, I think people learned their lesson that's why I was laughing. The last election cycle, people, for various reasons, were pushed away. They didn't like the choices they had, and I don't want to get into that. But, it doesn't really matter. But no, you have to vote. Otherwise, you have, in my opinion, you got no right to bitch. You got no right to complain. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The only reason why things are corrupt in Wisconsin, to the extent they are, is it's the voters' fault.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, the sheriff's an elected official. The people that appoint the police chief are elected. The circuit court judges are elected. The Court of Appeals judges are elected. The Supreme Court judges are elected. And guess what? There's an election April 2nd that's going to have major consequences on the composition of that court. So if you're from Wisconsin, you don't vote, I have no sympathy for you. Zero, none.
Yep. Like you said there, folks, it's up to you guys. It's up to us to take an interest. It's up to us to clean up our own backyard, as it were.
It matters. It matters.
It really matters.
There's a train leaving, and it's leaving April 2nd.
Yeah.
So you're either on the train or you're off if you live in Wisconsin.
Yep. Take heed, folks. Take heed. So I think that's about it.
That is not a comment about anyone who's currently on here now or your subscribers that are Wisconsin.
Right. You're just openly challenging people, saying, you got to get out there and make it happen. We got it. I think we got it, right? I think everybody's got it. So I think we'll go ahead at this point. We'll cut to the last two songs by Stacy, one of which we're going to finish up with is It Really Matters. Just like your votes, folks. Just like your votes. Very important. Very, very important. So, you got anything to say before we cut to Stacy there real quick?
Thank you for letting me get on my soapbox.
Yep.
I hope it's something that gets contagious. People ask, oh, you're from Wisconsin. Do you know there's an election April 2nd? It's very important. And I'll help them. If they need help trying to educate themselves on it, I'll get them the links and whatever they need. But, I think we brought up some good stuff about how you can be involved in criminal justice reform. Thanks for having me.
Yep. And I don't think we're blaming the voters so much, Scooby, as much as we're saying people not getting out there and voting and making their voice heard take away from the actual, the people. If they're not out there making their voice heard, then the people aren't being heard is kind of what we're getting at. And so it's up to people to get out there and take an interest is what we're getting at.
You may not be saying that, but I'm saying it. I blame the people of Calumet County. They elected Uyghur. So if anybody's got a problem with what Uyghur did, you know, it's the voters in Calumet County.
Yeah. Okay, right on.
But you know, I realize, you know, we don't live in Calumet County. But you got to vote. You got to vote.
And so one of these things that hit me is when this documentary came out, I kind of watched it and it's moving. You know, it's a great film.
Have any of you guys seen the movie?
Thanks, counselor.
Making a Murderer.
It's a series on Netflix.
Yeah, and so I got bit by it and I went into the trial transcripts and there's a whole community out there and yeah, the guy's still in prison actually. It's actually some stuff happening in the case which is exciting, but it's just a regular guy that corrupt officials thought no one would care about, but what happened was there's two young filmmakers that decided to film it all for 10 years and made this documentary. It's a really great watch. And the last name of the individual is Avery. And so I wrote this song kind of saying, you know, it could happen to any of us, and that whole injustice anywhere is a threat to justice, justice everywhere. So this one's called Avery Road. Feel free to drum take.
Remember, we all live on Avery Road. We're all interested in this case. Even if we don't all agree all the time.
Wisconsin can be so cold. The scales of justice can erode.
If we accept
lies big and bold. All we forget, we live on Avery Road. We live on Avery Road. Should be easy to see. This could be you, could be me. Shouldn't sit by idly, expect everything, all that we are told. We live on Avery Road. We live on Avery Road. On Avery Road.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. And yeah, so what's happened is over about the last 3 years, these things have just been picking at me. It's been my what I do at night. I read court proceedings, and we learned a lot about it. So I got about 15 songs on this subject, and I was lucky to have someone I don't know offer to record them for me, send me money from Australia of all places, and he just believed in the cause, and so I was able to record about 10 of them so far, and It's awesome. Really great community. There's about 100,000 of us out there that are on this sort of raising awareness. And
I'm converted.
yeah, man. And this song's called "It Really Matters." And you might not know, but if it piques some interest, take a look at the documentary. It's on Netflix. Making a Murder. There's now 2 parts, so there's 20 episodes. Really quality. And thanks for listening. So here it goes.
Let's keep talking about Avery.
Yeah, let's keep talking till
Let's
he's
keep
set free.
You just listen, I think you'll see why it matters. It really matters. Put aside the documentary, the state's version of idiocracy. All the claims so blatantly get torn to tatters. I think that matters. I bet you heard about Hood last sweat, but maybe you ain't heard this yet. 19 more times the DNA that was left anywhere else that day. I think that matters. I really do. I think it matters.
You're all welcome. You're welcome, Drum.
My ex-boyfriend was a day planner page, and yet they did not investigate. And who knows why? Who can say why he was signed into the crime scene that day? I think that matters. I really do. I think it matters. How about that barrel that once was seized, but then returned to the Averys? The bones were found the next day, but not one photograph exists of where they lay. I say that matters. I really do. I think it matters. I could go on listing things off, getting more things, but I just keep on singing these songs till Avery's freedom rings. I said it matters. I really do. I think it matters. This could be you. I know it matters. This could be me. I said it matters. Work with KZ, oh now it matters. It really matters. I said it matters.
Thank you, everybody. All right.
All righty. So that was Stacy live. It was awesome. Can't wait to see him do another live session. He played well. He, introduced the songs well in between. He's really developing, his stage presence. Looks like he's really starting to get comfortable in front of a crowd, which is definitely was one of the hardest things about becoming a YouTuber was getting used to the fact that thousands of people or hundreds to thousands of people were going to be out there on their computer screens potentially, looking at me and watching me and stuff. So that's definitely one of the things about this stuff that's a little bit intimidating at first, but it really looks like Stacy's starting to come into his own here, starting to really, he's starting to be able to use his presence. And like I said, the way he talked in between introducing his songs, he's really, I just saw a kind of a comfort there that I kind of felt he was, missing, I think, previously, and so it was great to see it. Anyway, he's doing a great job. He's just writing better and better songs. I can't wait to see what's next. So we love Stacy here. That's about it for today, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.